Crypto needs to be either decriminalized or fully legalized as a matter of policy.
The ARC and badge is already up, meaning they are approved and registered, right?
By the way, as soon as that news came out, we immediately sold all our USDT, whatever we had.
And the total volume of the Russian crypto market is estimated at $50 or $60 billion.
In a month, our turnover exceeded 500 million. You don't even forget about the bananas.
That's cool, but in this case, crypto prognosis is just a tool.
Oil goes for 70 million per tanker, $70 million, and here you are telling us about some crypto. Get out of here.
I saw that your annual turnover at Veda exceeds 100 billion rubles.
You made a very sharp observation. This is an unsustainable model.
I read a Forbes article about the difference between the digital ruble and the regular ruble.
Which supplier will accept Bitcoin? It depends on negotiation. What am I supposed to do with this Bitcoin?
Guys, hello everyone. Today is a new episode on the Axiomica YouTube channel. All that is our guest is Denis. Hello, Denis. Hello, Marat. Hello. Denis is the manager of SkyCapital, the first legal crypto platform in Russia. Yes, if you can put it that way, which specializes specifically in international transactions, officially in crypto, with customs, lawyers, audits, documents, and so on.
But overall, yes, except we're not a fund, we're specifically a crypto platform, allowing both individuals and legal entities to work with crypto. So essentially, yes, we are the first legal crypto platform in Russia that allows you to buy virtually any type of cryptocurrency with rubles, which we are now adding to our platform. At the same time, we offer two types of exchange. One is exchange through order books. You can place orders for your cryptocurrency, either to buy or sell, or you can make a quick exchange through the exchange service.
You've been in Fintech for 15 years, right? More than 50 integrations with banks and international payments. I saw that your transaction volume is over 100 billion rubles a year.
Well, we actually started this business with Veda. So in 2022, since we came from Fintech and basically continued working in Fintech, we launched two products at the same time. The first was money transfers via Telegram. Because when all our bank's mobile apps started getting removed from the App Store, Google Market, and other platforms, we thought about where we could create a financial service that wouldn't get deleted. Well, the most convenient platform for integration turned out to be Telegram. And basically through Telegram. From the very first month, without a single ad, by the way, we just mentioned in one place that we had this option. Word of mouth just took off, and in a month, the turnover exceeded 500 million. By the way, the service worked until the moment our regulator, the central bank, banned the use of foreign messengers in finance. So, well, it just happened that way.
On the other hand, in Telegram, some channels and bots already have the RKN badge, meaning they are approved and registered. It all looks very strange, but it is what it is.
As of today, we're in a situation where it's both possible and necessary to explain how we work and why it's important to do so. For example, our first steps in foreign economic activity were with a factoring company. We wanted to create a mirrored agency factoring system for cash flow management through managing accounts receivable. To put it simply, there's an importer who needs to pay their supplier for some equipment. Accordingly, under the agency agreement, he has receivables abroad, pays into our factoring company, and then we, together with this factoring company, handle the export. Unfortunately, we wanted to set up the same model somewhere abroad so that there would be no direct financial transactions between countries. Unfortunately, we couldn't find any understanding of our model abroad. We restructured this factoring company financially, but kept the OKVD codes 64999. This is a financial activity that, according to our law, must be licensed. And we simply called the VRNK and sent them a letter with a very straightforward message. Guys, here's our agency model. We work as agents for import and export in this way. Here are our contracts, here are our obligations, and this is how we settle accounts. How should we report to you, since we are required to do so? We are accountable to ROSVEM. A week later, we received an order stating that we were removed from mandatory reporting to the VRNK. And with this order, accordingly, we don't need anything from the bank there.
That's cool. Right now, this issue is actually really acute. Because in Russia, tens of thousands of entrepreneurs work with China, Turkey, and the UAE. And they found themselves in a difficult situation since SWIFT is working unstably. Then for a while it stopped working altogether. Then it started working again, but only for certain countries. Commissions have gone up and the ruble isn't accepted everywhere. But at the same time, trade doesn't really stop. Yes, we always need the dollar. And it's as if crypto has now become a kind of financial bridge in relations between countries. Even if you look at the news from Chainalysis, Russia is in the top 10 countries by crypto transaction volumes. And the volume of the Russian crypto market is estimated at about $50 to $60 billion. But at the same time, 90% of deals are done in the shadows. Companies are afraid that everything is illegal. And here it turns out companies like SkyCapital have appeared and decided to change the rules of the game to show that it can be done legally, right?
Yes, that's right. Let me add a little. As for SWIFT, it doesn't work at all. So if there are any non-sanctioned banks left, if any still exist, honestly, I stopped keeping track over a year ago. There's absolutely no point in that. It's absolutely impossible to pay for anything via SWIFT. Even bananas are on the SDN list for Russia. So you can't even pay for bananas, if it were possible. As for the use of SWIFT, today it is used everywhere, both for imports and exports. I've mentioned this more than once using my own experience as an example. Last year, we had the opportunity to communicate with fairly large exporters from various industries to whom we explained, guys, we know how to do not only netting settlements, taking your export proceeds to pay for imports abroad, but we can also, beyond that limit, use and apply cryptocurrencies to increase these volumes in order to return your exports to you. Honestly, I'll tell you, they looked at me like I was some kind of school kid. Crypto? What crypto? We're shipping metal here. We're sending out oil by the ton. Each tanker goes for $70 million. And you're here telling us about some kind of crypto. Get out of here. But today, exporters of this kind are just flooding us. Everyone has accepted it. Realized that this is something they need to work with. But the most important thing, the reason this became possible, is that we received recognition from regulators, from the government, about what crypto is and that it is necessary. If you look at the rhetoric around crypto regulation, say even just 5 years ago, remember how they wanted to ban everything outright. They didn't even want to say the word out loud. Crypto was completely forbidden, and they said it would never exist. And no one could seriously even dream that we would ever have any kind of crypto regulation. But today we see a completely different rhetoric. Now they're saying that crypto needs to be decriminalized or legalized. Basically, this is the direction we're actively working in now, including with our public initiatives and even with the development of draft laws.
Could you please now go into more detail and explain how a real transaction in USDT with foreign countries actually takes place? Maybe you could walk us through a case without naming any companies, and here's what I'm interested in. What is the sequence of actions? Let's say, for example, I currently have a significant amount of Russian rubles here. I urgently need to pay for some kind of specialized plant in the Netherlands, specifically in very large quantities, for an important transaction. The client is basically ready to accept money there from a domestic counterparty or from a foreign one, but not from Russia. Or here's another case that sometimes happens. By the way, I have a related question. So here's my second question right away. If the counterparty later wants to accept payment in crypto, how do they, on their side, handle the paperwork under their own laws to document that they delivered a large volume and received payment in crypto?
Look, this question should be divided into two parts. First and foremost, it is important to emphasize that even though we continue to maintain a strong and collaborative working relationship with WED, it is crucial to understand that abroad SkyCapital's primary focus and operational scope are definitely not centered around the last mile of delivery or service provision. SkyCapital is about exchanging rubles for USDT in a non-cash form, including using contracts for foreign economic activity. So if you, as an esteemed importer, genuinely want to purchase USDT from us, under your existing contract for those beautiful and vibrant tulips originating from Holland, then your respected counterparty in Holland either already possesses the necessary knowledge and capability to efficiently convert that USDT into their local euros for their own benefit, or they are simply and readily prepared to accept this form of cryptocurrency directly from you as a valid and convenient payment method. In other words, USDT here serves specifically as a means of transporting money from point A to point B as a kind of conversion tool. Across the European Union, many payment companies with EMI licenses are widely used. These companies are connected and have accounts on European, including crypto, exchanges where they can exchange USDT for fiat currency, withdraw it to their settlement account, and then make a purchase according to your invoice. You're absolutely right about that, in the sense that Europe, China, and many other countries easily accept funds from third parties and often don't even ask for contracts with them. But still, SkyCap is specifically about exchanging rubles. If we carefully break down your particular case, I can actually illustrate it quite clearly with our very own compelling example from approximately 2 years ago. We extensively work with the vital energy sector on crucial imports, and there was a specific gas company that urgently needed to acquire specialized paints, some truly unique and particular kinds of paints that you simply cannot readily obtain or procure in Russia. They had an existing long-standing contract with their established Russian supplier for these essential paints, but the supplier was unable to fulfill the order due to the unavailability of these specific materials. Unfortunately, this Russian supplier was unable to either purchase or import them. But since the contracts were already signed and something had to be done, together with our partners, we found these paints in the United Arab Emirates and signed a contract through our payment agent company in Russia. We drew up a supply contract with this same supplier, just so we wouldn't have to redo a ton of paperwork. We sent USDT in Dubai, and neither our buyer in Russia nor this supplier even knew about it. The paints were quickly loaded onto a plane and delivered to Russia by air freight. So, in total, the whole deal took about 2 or 3 days, and within a week the paints were already with our supplier. At the same time, we accepted rubles in Russia. Naturally, we exchanged those rubles for USDT. In the Arab Emirates, there are absolutely no issues exchanging USDT for dirhams. The Arab himself says, "I don't even need dirhams, just give me USDT and we'll get everything done quickly." They
always have 3.65 by default over there.
That's because the dirham is always strictly pegged to the dollar, which is convenient. And in general, it's much better to settle in dirhams rather than dollars in the Arab Emirates. They strongly support their national currencies.
Here's another question. After the whole world of analysts, blockchain analysts, started monitoring payments from Russia following the collapse of Garantex, how are things going now with payments, and has the monitoring of the foreign trade payments market, the liquidity leaving Russia, intensified in an effort to track this crypto and label it as sanctioned?
This is happening not only with crypto, but also with fiat. Naturally, the filters and restrictions will keep getting tighter and tighter, with fewer and fewer relaxations. I don't believe in them. What kind of relaxations are we even talking about? We're realists. So if we take, you can look at the example of Iranian companies, which have tens of thousands of trust legal entities all over the world, and some liquidity is distributed among all of them, managed by their central bank for foreign economic activity. Naturally, they diversify like that. They don't keep their money in one place, and these companies are basically disposable for them. That is, they operate for a few months, then close down and open a new legal entity. This is really at a very basic, everyday level. If we talk about the industrial level, then naturally the same filters apply to foreign counterparties, legal entities that work with Russian import-export. Of course, it's the same story. As I mentioned about Profinet, these companies get blocked as well. They also block accounts, request information about the source of funds, where the goods are going, where they were purchased, and so on and so forth. The same thing happens with crypto. The issuer, Tether Limited, has all the necessary tools to determine the ultimate source of the dollars or other currencies that were used to purchase USDT. There is always a risk in this, because if, for example, some counterparties abroad received payment for oil and immediately used that money to buy USDT, those USDT probably won't last long, and it's unlikely they'll be able to move them anywhere at all, because right away, I'm talking about buying USDT directly from the issuer. There aren't any such problems. You can buy it right away, but that's an extremely high risk. I'm probably 49.9% sure that the Garantex issue was exactly about this, because a lot of USDT were in the red zone, and their ML was almost always above 50% throughout their history. If you check them, you could see that it was sanctioned crypto. So, unraveling this chain of wallets for Tether wasn't much of a challenge. And of course, it was a major blow to the Russian market as a whole. By the way, as soon as this news came out, we immediately sold all our USDT, whatever we had. We added decentralized currencies to our platform. First, we added a DEX, which is actually where we converted our USDT, simply because it's convenient. 1 USDT equals 1 DAI. And basically, we use DAI as a buffer between the ruble and USDT just to minimize the risks of any potential freezes.
But now Russian stablecoins are starting to appear on the market. What can you say about this? The emergence of A7.5 is also in fact a convenient tool on the blockchain. You convert 1 ruble to 1 token and then you exchange those tokens for USDT.
Listen, well, this is basically the very idea we had when we took DEX currencies, which have quite high liquidity and demand on the global market, so you can always exchange or convert from DAI to USDT and back. And regarding A7, again, why is it consistently referred to and called a Russian token when, in actual fact, it demonstrably has no genuine or significant connection to the country of Russia at all, which seems to be a rather curious misnomer or misunderstanding?
All right, fine, let it be that way. Everyone kind of understands what it is, let's just say it doesn't matter, fine. It's just that I arrive in Moscow and all the streets of New Arbat and all the streets of Moscow city are lit up with the same advertisement. The best international payment provider, A7.5, buys rubles from the local stablecoin with PSB banks.
Absolutely right. The guys are doing a great job in this regard. This is a truly significant and profoundly positive step forward for the entire industry as a whole, especially when such groundbreaking news is widely published everywhere and innovative companies like ours emerge, providing essential and practical tools that genuinely allow people to effectively work with various cryptocurrencies in Russia. Besides this particular company, I also recently heard that there was significant news published indicating that Rostec has successfully created its very own similar digital token. How true it is that it's actually Rostec is up for debate, but apparently even major media outlets have published such reports. So there are links and basically a working website. The token is called Arteo. Everything is similar. That's cool. I'll have to check it out. Look, yeah, I can send you a link to them. How true is it that it's the parent company, Rostec itself? I don't know. I can't confirm it. Time will tell. As of today, there are just such announcements. At the beginning of this year, we thought about making our own token as a sort of intermediary, but that's why we went with DEX. We decided, to combine the best of both worlds. We were thinking of making a kind of digital intermediary, that is, to join the register of digital exchange operators for digital financial assets, issue our own token, but not handle the issuance ourselves on the central bank because that would have been too big of an undertaking. Since we are essentially a platform where cryptocurrencies are exchanged, adding some additional token and integrating it wouldn't be difficult for us. So the choice naturally fell on exchange operators. We had already agreed on the issuance with Sber. They supported us. Everything was fine, but Federal Law 259 limits us a bit in this regard. It restricts us in the sense that there is a maximum annual limit on issuance. But actually, there isn't a limit on issuance. We back each token with 1 ruble. So basically, as much liquidity as we have, that's how many tokens we can issue. But when it comes to purchasing, for example, if you wanted to buy such a token, you would have a limit. This year, the limit was set at 600,000 rubles per year. At the end of the year, it will be increased to 1 million, but we understand that this approach won't work anymore. It all needs to be expanded, but that will take time. Plus, there's the issue of further exchanging digital financial assets for cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency in Russia is recognized as property, which is not subject to VAT. And if you exchange digital financial assets for essentially property, then it's a transaction, it's a barter deal. But who are you making this deal with? With a non-resident company, which means it's once again foreign economic activity, so for now there's really no point in it. But in principle, I see the future use of this if these mechanisms are tweaked a bit.
Listen, I also wanted to ask, there's another tool in cryptocurrency, like mining, right?
It's a good tool.
And Russia is in second place in the world for mining right after the USA. Many people believe that mining is already becoming part of something bigger because large companies are also starting to mine, even though not many people talk about it, but I've seen it myself. Why, for example, aren't people using this kind of combination right now? Some people aggregate a large amount of mining there, then pass on the freshly mined coins. The freshly mined coins are swapped somewhere into USDT and then used to fulfill a contract. And the freshly mined coins can be bought for rubles because they're clean and it's like an immediate conversion into rubles, for example. And the third question, well, at first I was thinking about this, but then I realized, and you'll probably confirm this for me now, at first I wondered, why transactions aren't done in Bitcoin. But then I realized that at the moment, when you send it at a rate of 115 and it arrives at a rate of 120, you end up overpaying and no one is going to refund you the difference. So for me, that question is already settled. The only main question that remains is why there's no infrastructure in Russia to acquire clean Bitcoin, to find infrastructure for conveniently swapping it in large volumes, which is actually quite a difficult task, and then use that clean Bitcoin for transactions.
Well, let's answer this big question step by step. Yes, you're absolutely right. Russia is in second place. We have huge mining capacities, and they continue to grow. Moreover, big players with large businesses who have a surplus of capacity have already entered this sector and have been here for quite some time, by the way. Why aren't there platforms in Russia? Why do they exist? We're exchanging Bitcoin. As we're talking right now, I see a message coming in that there's a request for 1.5 Bitcoins. We're exchanging 1.5 Bitcoins for some miner so he can pay for his electricity here. Indeed, as of today, we exchange 1.5 Bitcoins in some way so that I can pay for my electricity here. Indeed, as of today, there isn't such a systematic demand where you can immediately deposit Bitcoin and exchange it for rubles because it's still an organic process. First, you need to gradually accumulate the necessary number of participant orders so that you can make direct exchanges from Bitcoin to rubles. Today, Bitcoin exchanges are done, as you correctly noted, on third-party foreign exchanges. You exchange Bitcoin for USDT, and then you exchange USDT for rubles. So, direct exchanges from Bitcoin to rubles do exist, of course, but
they will be illegal and they won't be profitable because whoever is exchanging Bitcoin for rubles is also either hedging back into USDT or simply exchanging it because they need Bitcoin in a specific amount.
Listen, when someone needs Bitcoin, they just buy Bitcoin for rubles right away. We have a Bitcoin ruble order book. And of course, the exchange rate is constantly fluctuating. It's more convenient. Why is it more convenient? Because when you exit Bitcoin into dollars, you're already exposed to an open currency position. Bitcoin might go up or down, just like the dollar, by the way. And then after that, you sell the dollar and you no longer have the same Bitcoin rate you started the transaction with. But if, accordingly, you gather the necessary amount of liquidity in the order book from Bitcoin to ruble, then you won't have these problems. There's no second leg, you see that gap in between, which creates a significant time lag from the moment you send Bitcoin to the moment you receive rubles. And this gap in price formation when you're selling, how much you're selling, where the rate will go, remains unknown. Regarding foreign economic activity, both the Bitcoin Fed and miners in principle participate in foreign trade one way or another. The only issue is that foreign suppliers don't need Bitcoin. That is, none of the suppliers, whether it's China, where crypto payments are basically not allowed, let's not confuse it with Hong Kong, where everything is fine with that, none of the foreign suppliers in principle would accept it. And just imagine, someone comes to you, say you're selling flowers, and a supplier comes and says, listen, I can't pay you in rubles, take Bitcoin instead. Man, what are you talking about? Let's figure out something else. And how am I supposed to pay you in Bitcoin? At what rate? How much do you want to ship? So in reality, how are we even supposed to agree on this? And honestly, who even deals with this Bitcoin stuff? That's why, for me, Bitcoin is an asset, a valuable liquid asset. But as a means of payment or settlement, it's definitely not suitable.
Hello, this is the Axiom channel. Our company develops Web3 products for businesses and we address a wide range of issues related to the tokenization of your business and other products. We develop smart contracts, launch blockchain projects, and of course share our expertise through our YouTube channel so you can understand what cryptocurrency is. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay updated on news and new releases. This is Axiom. Continuing on the topic of settlements, specifically in crypto, I wanted to ask you and the guys who have been in this field for a long time and work with legal entities, how often in Russia, with the emergence of this connection, does the market for these payments split into two schemes, a gray one and a legal one? Let me explain what I mean. I'm thinking about how often it happens that the gray scheme of buying, say, USDT is used by companies for cashing out funds. It's no secret to anyone because that's how it happens. It's happened often. There have been a couple of news stories about it. So How do you, for example, distinguish here? Are you helping the client carry out this payment, or are you simply offering them to buy crypto, write off their non-cash rubles, and just disappear into the sunset?
The last thing you mentioned is not even a gray scheme, it's a black scheme, meaning it's...
Yeah, right, black, sorry.
There's no gray area here at all. Everything is quite straightforward. In this regard, we haven't invented anything new. There's Federal Law number 115 on counteracting the legalization, laundering of proceeds from crime, and so on. There's the process of financial monitoring, anti-money laundering, internal controls. In other words, everything is just as it is in the regular business activities of any company. So if you want to buy Bitcoin, any company can buy Bitcoin, absolutely any company. You can sign a contract with a miner and under a purchase and sale agreement, buy Bitcoin from them and put that Bitcoin on your company's balance sheet, just as if you were buying, say, chairs, tables, a car, and so on. By the way, I can even provide links to accounting entries showing how this can be done. Everything has already been figured out a long time ago. Any company that purchases some kind of asset, even in our case a digital one, must have profits with which it makes that purchase. If a company is unprofitable, then probably such a company should not be buying such high-risk assets as cryptocurrency. This is the first filter we apply as well. For example, we will not approve a company that is less than a year old because we need to know its history. We will not approve a company that is operating at a loss, that has no staff, or that has had no turnover. It's pretty obvious. If such a company comes to buy Bitcoin, you have to ask, why do they need it? Secondly, if a company is engaged in foreign economic activity, then Bitcoin, like other cryptocurrencies, can be considered as a means of transferring money to its supplier. Here, accordingly, there is always a mandatory contract for purchasing something from abroad, and it is subject to banking oversight. Any import or export contract is recorded and registered with your bank and then subsequently registered with the central bank. These are mandatory documents that allow you to settle accounts with your foreign counterparties. If you don't have this, then you simply can't make the purchase.
That's interesting. So you have your own internal onboarding process through which you onboard your clients.
Basically, we implemented all these rules by taking them from the banking sector. In other words, we put crypto onto banking rails under the same laws and regulations that have been in place for the past 30 years. After all, what exactly is the fundamental difference between exchanging United States dollars for Russian rubles and, for instance, exchanging USDT, which is a stable coin, for Russian rubles, or perhaps conducting foreign economic activity, if we consider going back to the very beginning of what we initially started with? All these rules are in place. The bank acts as a currency control agent, just like how it works for us now. The rules for financial monitoring and counteraction are exactly the same.
It's interesting, but in this case, crypto isn't a panacea. It's just a tool, and the rules here are basically more or less the same.
Yes, of course. Our very first and main goal is to provide crypto as a practical tool for solving specific problems and tasks. That means making it understandable, safe, and transparent for all participants in this sector, banks, regulators, and counterparties alike.
I agree. Well, for example, right now I want to touch on the topic of Russia. Currently, more than 50 countries around the world are already developing their own CBDCs. Singapore and Hong Kong, for instance, have already launched programs for tokenized trading, gold, commodities, and so on. In Russia, the first laws on digital financial assets have been adopted, but there isn't a fully developed market for regular users or for legal entities, or if there is, very few people actually use it. I wanted to ask you, how do you see the development of crypto regulation in Russia over the next year or two?
That's a good question. Well, look, the 2052 Digital Financial Assets Law is a bit different. It's not really about crypto.
I agree that it's correct to separate digital financial assets, CBDCs, and crypto into three different things, but for some reason everyone thinks they're the same.
That's absolutely not the case. Digital financial assets are not crypto at all. It's a separate entity that was essentially invented and launched in Russia. The reason it's not widely used is because even I don't understand its practical application or what to actually do with it. So, going back 10 to 15 minutes, we wanted to provide a practical tool with digital financial assets as a buffer between the ruble and cryptocurrency, but that hasn't worked out either because there are certain limitations. Some deals for raising investments do go through, something gets built, something happens with various active market participants. Right now, there are about 18 operators registered or so.
Well, it's around that number, yes, and soon it might even reach 20, but for now, it's unclear what exactly they're doing. I agree, and to me,
It's unclear as well. Why and how are they being used? And regarding national currencies and cryptocurrencies, we have, well, right now, any day now, everyone is expecting an order or directive from the central bank to begin testing the digital ruble. But there are nuances here as well. Again, in my subjective opinion, the word digital doesn't change the essence of the ruble.
I read a Forbes article about what distinguishes the digital ruble from the regular ruble, and it used an analogy comparing the digital ruble, non-cash ruble, and cash ruble. The digital ruble will differ from the digital ruble in terms of functions and structure. It is similar to the cash ruble. Let me explain why. Because any non-cash ruble is not issued by the central bank, but is instead under the control of the bank's side. But cash is not controlled by banks, it is controlled by the central bank. That's why the digital ruble will be an analog of the cash ruble only in the digital space, and it will be controlled by the central bank, not by any third-party bank. That's the short version.
It's an interesting comparison including cash and digital money. They seem similar, but in reality they are fundamentally different. The fact that the issuer is the central bank is true, but the entire control, absolute and total control over the digital ruble in real time belongs to the central bank. With cash, you can't control anything online, except for, say, announcing, tomorrow we have a new type of banknote, everyone bring in your old ones and exchange them. But as we understand, that's impossible to do. With the digital ruble, it's a completely different story. And essentially, for the financial sector, the global financial sector, not just for Russia, digital national currencies are the future, where banks essentially become service companies. Just imagine, with digital currencies, correspondent banks are no longer needed. All the bank will do is essentially carry out KYC and identification for you in order to submit this information to the central bank and provide clients with some service-related near financial services, which in principle many banks are already developing and offering. But when it comes to deposits and correspondent relationships, banks will essentially be disconnected.
Well, actually, more or less, what could you compare this kind of digital ruble strategy to? The issuer of USDT is USDT itself. If I want to exchange USDT, I go to an exchange and the exchange is a bank. It earns from fees, it holds assets in other digital assets, digital rubles, dirhams, and so on. It can perform exchanges, earning commissions, but essentially it just stores a large amount of liquidity in various digital currencies.
One of the areas of activity that banks are engaged in anyway is converting from the national currency to foreign ones. And here it's exactly the same. Absolutely right, yes. This is exactly one of those functions that will remain with the banks. Even, if you look back, say, 15 years ago, the banking sector didn't consider commission-based business. I include in that cross-border transfers, cross-border payments, currency exchange, and these kinds of operations. It was like, why bother with that? It's a penny business. You can't make any money from it. Loans, now that's different. Deposits, wow. And basically everyone was only focused on those. Today, all banks, well, first of all, a lot of banks have left the market. And now there are less than 300 left, probably. Banks, in essence, are looking for any way to make money. Because if a bank doesn't have a strategy, or if they don't follow that strategy, since every year any credit organization comes to the central bank and presents its business plan for the coming year, here's the area we're going to develop, here are the targets we'll have, here's why we're doing this. If they don't submit this business plan, then the bank isn't needed, according to the regulator's opinion. And honestly, I 100% agree with that. Why do you need banks if you don't know what to do with them, if you're not achieving these targets, or if you declare that you're not doing anything about it, but then why and what went wrong, that kind of thing. As for banks getting involved in cryptocurrency, we're already seeing that now from various sources, from different sides. All of our top 5 banks have entered the digital financial assets, DFA space. All are actively developing blockchain projects, preparing for future work in the experimental legal regime, for example. Everyone is creating fintech companies alongside themselves that will work with crypto because banks already realize the need to operate in this area, otherwise they'll just be left behind in history and so on.
Denis, may I ask one final important question? I'm truly curious. At the very beginning of this current year, everyone was widely expecting the significant EPR on cross-border payments, specifically those conducted via crypto. They were actively assembling some kind of dedicated working group, diligently assigning various different roles such as platform provider, liquidity provider, and so on. But regrettably, nothing substantial has been officially launched or implemented so far. My second question is about a company called SkyCapital. They have a legal crypto exchange platform that processes these payments. So what's the difference between the EPR that's supposed to launch, with all the recruitment, strict onboarding, FSP involvement, licenses, and so on, and what's currently operating under the name SkyCapital?
That's a very sharp observation you made. Yes, the experimental legal regime is essentially a pilot project to see how things will work out, whether it will take off or not, whether it will function as intended. Basically, it's a sandbox set up by the regulator. We actually launched our own experiment last year, and we demonstrated that this experiment has essentially become part of the system. But still, these are not the same EPR rules that the regulator, namely the central bank, wants to see. By the way, no matter how secretive the EPR is supposed to be, everyone is already talking about it publicly. People from the team are coming out, sharing details about its features, rules, and so on. In other words, information is leaking out one way or another. By the way, we also joined the experimental legal regime as an authorized organization, which will serve as a platform for cryptocurrency exchange, providing liquidity for importers. Why isn't it working everywhere right now? Well, there are two reasons. First, it's a closed platform. After all, not everyone is allowed access. And the second and most important reason why this is being done the right way, not just rushing in and saying, let's do it right now, but taking a gradual approach, is that in its current form, the experimental legal regime is an unviable model. We have diligently submitted and continue to actively submit various initiatives that are now being carefully considered in order to give this important experiment a real and genuine chance at achieving viability. What exactly am I talking about? Here's the very first question we asked participants from the government structures, from the state authorities regarding the experimental legal regime. The law explicitly states that only a resident company can act as a liquidity provider. My question is, who is this resident company that actually has crypto? They answer me?
A cryptocurrency miner who needs to exchange Bitcoin for rubles, or perhaps Bitcoin for rubles, for example, or even for USDT.
All right, let's say Russia is in second place for mining, but what is the actual volume of mining and imports here? That's the first question.
I think it's incomparable. Even if you gather all the miners who actually come out into the open, the volume still wouldn't be enough to run cross-border transactions.
Absolutely, 100% right. The second question concerns mining, which we've already touched on today. Which supplier is going to take Bitcoin? And where is this Bitcoin going to go?
None. You need to swap Bitcoin somewhere, but it's unclear where to do that. So,
mining doesn't solve the issue with settlements.
agreed. So we need something else.
Next point. How much import and export does Russia have if we're talking about an experimental legal regime exclusively for foreign economic activity? The answer is public. You can go to the Rostec website. It's public up to 2022 and download the data on how much goods Russia purchases and how much it supplies. The ratio will be $450 billion in exports, that is, we need to bring that money back into the country, and $250 billion in imports, where we pay. So here come those very exporters with $200 billion who say, I want to get rubles, what should I do?
The total volume of the Russian crypto market is estimated at $50 to $60 billion, so even if everyone gathers their assets and gives them to the PDRP, it would be enough for 2 quarters, maybe just one.
Therefore, the solution to this issue, well, it's obvious that cryptocurrency can't solve all the problems, but it can definitely address some of them. And in my opinion, the only solution to this task is to expand access to participation in the PDRP, not just for import and export, but, as the latest news suggests, if you saw it, retail investors should also be allowed in. Why? Because we need to expand access. And who holds the most USDT and who are the professionals in this market? The existing exchangers who have been operating for decades, there you go, those who always have liquidity, who can both buy and sell. These are the ones who should become retail investors and be allowed to participate in the PDRP. This is a win-win situation where the issue of the experimental legal regime is resolved, and for these market participants, you essentially legalize them and offer them a new sales market. In doing so, you create a need for synergy across the entire industry.
I agree, Denis. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk with you and discuss this pressing topic. We were joined by Denis Balashov, managing partner at SkyCapital. Denis, please provide all the information you can share, everything we've covered in our conversation. I'll include the links. If you have any social media accounts, or if viewers have questions they'd like to ask Denis, I'll probably include your contact as well.
Of course. Marat, thank you very much for the conversation. Your questions were very thoughtful and interesting. I know that your company is involved in fintech development and you have extensive experience in this field. I'm sure we'll be able to collaborate with you again somewhere down the line. I'll always be happy to stay in touch with you, and thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank you. It was great to see you. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Hello. This is the Axiomica channel. Our company develops Web3 products for businesses, and we address a wide range of issues related to the tokenization of your business and other products. We develop smart contracts, launch blockchain projects, and of course, share our expertise on our YouTube channel so you can understand what cryptocurrency is. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay updated with the latest news and new episodes. This is Axiomica.